Who doesn't like to create wealth? But the big question is, how do we create wealth? Where do I invest? Well, in today's Investors Hangout, we'll give you an investment roadmap to create long-term wealth. With me is Dhiren Kumar, CEO of Value Research, and this episode is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. Dhiren, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a big burning topic that we are talking about. मुझे wealth चाहिए, but मैं wealth कैसे create करूँ?
Building wealth is it's actually not optional. It is compulsory because you are going to live longer. You should be able to accumulate your savings or build wealth to the tune that it will last beyond your lifetime. Because if you exhaust all of it while you're alive, running the risk of spending all your savings in your lifetime is will cause distress. So I don't think building wealth, whether it's an optional thing or you can't do without it. And the changing dynamics of our expenditure, of our expenses, and the way the inflation has been, the way inflation will be in future, the way our individual inflation will be, the cost of healthcare, the cost of living longer, because if the average mortality was assuming 65 or 70, and that is going towards 75, 80 with better healthcare and other things, so you simply need more money to sustain yourself in your retirement. Your retirement phase is going to be longer. So you need to build wealth. How to do it? Same old principles. Save as much as you can. Save as much of it in equity for the longer period. The long-term money, the money which you don't need for next 5 years and more, should be in equity. Invest regularly. And if you are scared, many investors still in India are not, reconciling. Then, they are not appreciative of the necessity to invest in equity. And today we have, all the desirable vehicles to deal with it. For example, you're a first-time investor. You are scared of equity. You don't want to invest in equity. Still, you have to. So get started with equity saving fund. Only 1/3 of your money is going to be invested in equity. If you are going to invest regularly, you will reduce the risk of losing your capital substantially. That apart, 1/3 will actually give you reasonable experience that why you should not be scared of it. And once you have done this for 3 years, you will understand. Then upgrade yourself. Then move to the balanced fund, which is 50% equity, 50% debt. We don't have to be a good balanced fund. It's still, it has been mandated by the law. So maybe invest with the aggressive hybrid funds. These funds are 2/3 equity, 1/3 fixed income. So it is a steadier take. So you don't have to necessarily invest all your money in equity. You can start conservatively, move to more aggressive vehicles. Then after 3 years, move to multi-cap, move all your money to multi-caps and continue investing more. So if you have this principle that a part of your saving is getting invested, you are increasing your savings and you are investing in the appropriate vehicles so that you are not getting driven out of the market out of fear or on a decline. And if you keep doing this for 15, 20 years, you will build wealth. And you will build, and having more than enough is critical because and that is the only insurance against the risk of outliving your savings. Because if you don't do that, if you don't have more than enough, the changing dynamics of expenses, what happens if we actually in 50 years time we start living for 110 years? It's going to be a nightmare of a kind. The good news is that there's a possibility that we'll live that longer, and the bad news is that we may not have the money. And you will not be in a position to work then. Sure. So it's important to build wealth. It's important to get started. There are vehicles to do that. Start with equity savings if you are the scared kind, fearful kind, apprehensive and suspicious of equity. get into the aggressive hybrid fund after 3 years, get into multi-cap funds after 9 years, then get into small and mid-cap funds, put 20% of your money in small and mid-cap funds after that. All this is possible only if you have time, only if you have, you're investing for 20, 25, 30 years. And once you get, and if you have the time, if you have the inclination, invest in stocks directly as well. But it's important that you should have time, you have the understanding, and you also have the temperament, because investing in markets directly requires orientation, understanding, knowledge. And most investors who dabble into stocks directly, they don't they get into the speculative mode that quick returns. If you are deriving it, if you accidentally get started at a point where you are able to realize substantial gain, then you tend to get speculative. You don't become a long-term investor. You may not have the temperament, and maybe riding the up move might be easy. Reconciling with a fall might scare you out of the market. So choose your vehicle, get going, start investing, be regular, and equity is the only way to build wealth. Because if you are looking at fixed income, you can be well off, but you won't build wealth. Equity is the only thing which can potentially build wealth, because the difference is that fixed income will yield you anywhere between 6 to 9% over the next 20 years. Maybe less, maybe more, and taxable. And equity will get you 1.5 times to twice as much. And the compounding at that pace itself will build wealth.
Right. In our last episode, you mentioned about the importance of starting early.
Yeah.
So that whole
starting early is just as important, because the power of compounding, the magic of compounding, that requires time.
Right.
So if you are starting, think of it. If somehow I am able to build, assuming that I double my money every 5 years, and in 20 years' time, I am able to accumulate 1 crore rupee. And in 20 years' time, I build 1 crore rupee. Somebody who started 5 years early, he will be able to, he will have 2 crore rupee simply because he started 5 years ago. So, compounding works, and the benefits are not visible. And the joy of consuming money today is too tempting. You have just too many things available around, and you tend to spend it. But the power of compounding, the value of time, and starting 5 years ago before another person, you will understand that doubling your money every 5 years, which is not a very unrealistic thing, has not been an unrealistic thing in equity, but 1 crore and 2 crore for the difference of investing period of 20 and 25 years. So you understand why you need time.
Yeah. You mentioned a comment that you just made about the joy of consumption. It's so great these days. So there has to be some bit meant for this consumption. So when it comes to investment, should I look at 40-50% of consumption, 10% for enjoyment?
No,
there's no roadmap that way.
I'm not prescribing any percentage, because it varies from person to person.
And the goal.
One is goal. You might have fancy goal, but if you have immediate consumption need of 100% of your income, you won't save. You can actually, do some planning around it. For example, having a health insurance is important, because that will not derail your savings plan with you being unwell or a family member needed a cost. So that's one thing. Besides that, I think it's more a matter of discipline. If somehow there is a need for you to actually consume all your income, you can have a situation, you can have a circumstances. You have a family, assuming that you need to support your parent, and your income has come in handy to support that. Maybe you may not be able to save any money. Save 100 rupees. Whatever it is, because initial 3, 4, 5 years is more a matter of taking the lesson that how compounding works, how a small amount turns into a larger amount. and a larger amount, because when you are not able to save anything, even that 100 rupee or 250 rupees or 500 rupees will get you the cushion of 6,000 rupees in a year or 5,000 rupees handy at some point. So that is more of a learning phase. I think you are just going through that phase. So do that, fall in habit of that. If you can't invest in mutual fund, do your recurring deposit.
Okay.
Because having money which you may not have otherwise, and that is in fact that having that 6,000 rupee with your 500 rupee monthly saving will be far more valuable at a time than having maybe 50 lakh rupees 7 years later, when things would have changed. Your earnings will be supporting a higher spending. Despite that, you are able to save more. So initially it's learning.
Okay.
Fall in habit.
That's very well said. In the Indian scenario, we've been taught that, okay, घर में gold रख लो, तुम wealthy हो गए. So what do you have to say to that? I mean, is gold an investment?
Gold is a repository of value. It is valuable. It does not go down in value, but it does not generate wealth. It does not build wealth. And more so, if something happened to gold about 10 years back, the financialization of gold ETFs got created, gold funds got created, and a lot of investors, and then it coincided with the global financial crisis. For the first time in the world, the whole world was shaken by the decline in stock values, decline of bonds. For the first time, the money market fund in America did break the buck. So it went down in value by, the face value was 1 rupee. It never used to go down. It went down. So there was scare all around. And that is the time, and this financialization of gold was relatively new. So it just took off, and a lot of people started thinking that gold is an investment. It's not an investment. It is a store of value. It preserves it. It does not necessarily even preserve its value. So think of gold as a consumption. Think of a gold as a very emergency thing, as a store of value which can be put to use in emergency. But the way we consume it, the way we spend money on gold, you should have it to the extent of what is needed in the customary thing.
Okay.
Nothing beyond that.
Okay. What about stocks? You did mention about it. Should one invest in them? How do they fare vis-a-vis the equity?
No, you are investing in equity mutual fund. You are buying shares.
But on our own, can we get into stocks?
You should.
You should.
If you can. But if you can is a big question, because for most investors, they need time. They need interest. And the only thing which works in stocks, investing in companies directly, is choose a good company and have the patience to hold it.
Okay.
And keep an eye on that company, so that you have chosen a good company, and when it turns bad, you are able to anticipate that. Right. And on the way, there'll be a lot of noise. For no reason, many times the stock price will go up by 50%. Many times the stock price will go down by 50%. And you will have to build the technique of spotting that what is noise and what is bad news. It is a hard thing. It's a difficult thing. It requires practice. So maybe you will start small.
Okay.
Understand this thing. Don't speculate. In fact, avoiding speculation and not getting carried by the noise, because most stock investors tend to buy something based on very frivolous, rational. They don't understand. You have to think like an owner when you are buying a stock. Businesses don't get built overnight. It takes time for business to find its feet, get meaningful, get useful, and be good for customers. And then it has been able to devise some mechanism so that it succeeds and keeps prospering and growing. That takes time, and somebody should be watchful of that. And in between, you will have all these distractions that sometimes the stock price movement is not corporate performance. Stock prices go up because when companies make money, stock goes up. Right. When stock price goes up and the company is not making money, or company is making money and the stock price is not going up, that creates opportunity. That creates opportunity to buy or sell, or take a call on that. Investing for the long run, investing for the long run with understanding, keeping an eye on that. If you have all this time, inclination, and the temperament, then go for it. Else not.
Okay, so Dhiren has given you the mantras. Invest for long term, invest in equity, invest regularly, and if possible, invest as early as possible.